to do it tiny foundation paper piecing. So that's what we're going to work on today, and this should be a lot of fun. I think doing tiny piecing is just amazing. It's kind of addictive and almost intoxicating. I love to see the tiny little things, and you really have to make sure you don't misplace them too. So anyway, so this is the Live Well, Live Strong pattern. You can purchase your pattern at Stitches Quilting, or put a comment where you know where to find the pattern and things like that. In fact, let me go on and make sure that that is updated. I have my foundation paper piecing pattern that I am using, and so it's all ready for us to get going. And I even use scraps of fabric from when we made the foundation, the classic version size of the paper of the Flying Geese block earlier this week. I used my leftover fabrics. I'm going to be using that to do the foundation paper piecing. So I think that this is just more than perfect, and I can't wait for you guys to see how easy and simple this is, and to get a feel for foundation paper piecing and how simple it can be. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to switch my camera view. Let me know where you guys are from and where you are tuning in from. We've got Liz and we've got Margaret, and yes, it has been snowing. Let's switch our camera view real fast. But keep those comments coming in. Let me know where you are. Hi, Laura. It's so good to see you today. Whoops. And so what we're going to do is I've got my my pattern piece right here. When you purchase the original Live Well, Live Strong pattern, this comes as complimentary with your original purchase for a limited time right now. So we'll probably maybe have this be a separate purchase sometime in 2021. So be sure to purchase your pattern now, because the foundation paper piecing portion of it is complimentary right now. So let me go ahead and show you. It actually is about this. It's 19 pages long, and I print mine off on a newsprint paper, but we've already been through all those kind of tips and tricks and those types of things. So but look at this. Look at the size of our paper. Let's go ahead and look at the pattern of how this is done. So we've got A1, A2, A3 in this bottom section of this Flying Geese block. Then we've got A4, A5, and A6. So we want to go ahead and lay our fabric down on the back of this paper in that order. But let's go ahead and mark down what the colors of fabric that we're using. So right here, we've got white, so I'm going to put a W, and that's why you can really print off your foundation paper piecing pattern as black and white. So we've got white over here, we've got green in the center, we've got a white and a white, okay? So that's how we go ahead and mark what colors of fabrics that you are going to use. That's what I'm using in mine, that is the classic color version. Okay, so A1 is a white piece of fabric. So I'm going to pick up my white piece of fabric that I used for my larger classic size block. I guess I can turn these around so they're facing the right way. And I am going to lay this just right behind the fabric piece. I'm actually going to stick a pin in it, but I wanted to show you guys a tip that I've been doing. Is I have all of my large size pins right here, and my teeny tiny pins I actually put on the bottom of the bowl. They just they're easier to find right there. So I turn over my bowl, and I'm going to stick a pin in that. And I really like to use small tiny pins when I'm foundation paper piecing. So you can see, I don't know if you can see through the light, that is absolutely shining through, and I can see that right there. I'm going to lay, white is first, so A1 is white, so that's the first one behind this. I'm going to lay my green fabric right here, and maybe we should actually lay it like that, so it's going to go actually cross over. So you guys know me, I'm usually always using rectangular pieces, but these just looked so perfect It's just sometimes it's hard to estimate which way everything is going to go. So when this opens up, it's going to open that way, and it's going to cover up the entire green part of that. So I'm going to go ahead and lay those together like that. I'm going to stick a pin in all 3 layers of the paper, the white and the green. I'm going to take this over to the sewing machine, and I'm going to stitch just exactly on that stitch line right there between the two A1 and A2. So let's go ahead and do that. And you guys, I'm so excited. I ordered from Amazon an LED light for my sewing machine right here, so I can have a little bit more light right here. Do any of you guys have that? Do you guys have that feature on your sewing machine? I'm going to make sure I can see the chat comments a little bit better. Okay, so I'm just curious if you have that feature on your sewing machine. My light just isn't really pronounced on there. Okay, now we stitched, and now we're going to flip. So we are going to flip the paper over right like this, and you can also use a index card to help with that. You can use any type of index card. This is just regular white cardstock that I had laying around. I'm actually going to, you can lay your little cardstock right on that stitching line and flip it back. Okay, so let me hold that up a little closer. We're going to flip this back because we are going to trim our seam allowance in there. So, and I like to trim mine just a bit smaller than 1/4 inch. I don't want a really pronounced seam allowance coming out through my blocks, is what I found. Okay, so I stitched and I flipped. Now we're going to take out our pin. I'll put it on the back of my pin cushion there. And, oh, Jan, you bought the lights? I have 2 of them coming today. They're really affordable, like maybe just $8 for those little LED lights that you kind of tape up in here. I can't wait for them to come. Okay, we stitched, we flip, now we're going to press. So let's open this up, and I have my cute little Cricut Easy Press. Remember, when you're doing foundation paper piecing, you do not want to use any kind of iron with any steam or items in it, okay? Any steam or water. So now we're going to go ahead and we're going to move over here to the section between A2 and A3. So let's go ahead and fold back on that stitching line, and we're going to trim our fabrics over here. So let's go ahead and you could put that in there so you're sure that you've got a nice hard fold right there if you would like. I'm just giving you guys different tips and tricks as we move along with these blocks. I'm going to trim this. Once again, I trim a little bit less than 1/4 inch. Okay, there we go. I've got that now trimmed, all of those fabrics. I'm now going to line up. A2 is green. We can see that. A3 is white. So white I am going to put right next to my 1/4 inch seam here that I've made. I'm going to lay my white down, and I'm going to go ahead and now take this over to the sewing machine and stitch right on top of that little dashed line on the pattern. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, I love it. Okay, so I stitched just exactly right like that. I don't need to stitch and flip and trim right now because I've already have a nice little part going on there. So I'm actually going to flip it over and I'm going to press. So let's go ahead and open this up, and let's bring over the pressing mat. Oh, here's where I put it. I think it's time for me, oops, I was grabbing the wrong iron. Don't need the big, huge iron. I think it's time for me to wash my pressing mat. I need to throw this in the wash because it just kind of has some stains on there. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead. We've got that pressed. It looks beautiful. We're going to trim this side of it. Okay, so let's go ahead and get a little bit, some trimming going on here. Well, we don't have to do very much, but our next section is between A3 and A4. This entire unit, A1, A2, A3, and A4. So we are going to pull back A4. And I want to show you right here that I've actually stitched into A4, which is fine. It's not a problem. It's a natural thing to do. But as we fold this back, we are going to just loosen our stitches on the paper right there. Remember, we're using a teeny tiny, so I loosened my stitches, and I'm now going to fold that back on that stitching line, okay? And I can use my white index card if I want to make sure I've got a good stitch there. Okay, now we are going to lay this down with the ruler, and we're going to trim this at about less than 1/4 of an inch, or whatever you feel comfortable with, okay? Mine get pretty slim because these are pretty small blocks. Okay, A4 is G green. Let's bring our green fabric over. We're going to put it right sides together. I'm using solid fabrics, right like this. And since this is a green, I don't want it to, well, it's just fine where that's peeking out there, because I know when that folds. Okay, I'm going to lay this back up. I can stick a pin in it just to kind of secure it. I'm going to be stitching across the block on that little line. Okay, so let's get this going. We're almost done with this little quilt block. And my most favorite part of all is at the end when we get to trim everything up. Okay, so let's go ahead and take the pin out. I don't need to stitch and trim. I'm going to fold this over and press. So let's go ahead and get a good little look at this. And we'll see. So you guys, hi! Hello from Oakdale, California. And Liz, I agree. I am doing mine completely with all scraps. And, you know, it's amazing how much fabric we really do have. Okay, look at how pretty that looks. The precision of that seam matching right there. That's one of the great things about foundation paper piecing. Let's flip it around, and we're going to go between A4 and A5. Okay, so let's go ahead and get our white fabric right here. Once again, this is going to flip over like that. So I'm going to go ahead and match this with that line. What would be smart to do right now, though, is before I do that, I need to flip my paper back on that stitching line. And remember, I've gone ahead and I stitched over the stitching line. So I'm going to just tear my paper ever so slightly. We'll tear our paper anyways once we are finished with piecing the quilt. Do not tear your papers after you make your little quilt block. They just get really kind of hard to work with. So you can see my finished little quilt block still has the paper behind it. Okay, I keep the paper there until I have completely pieced together my entire quilt block. You can remove your paper. It's just going to make it a little more awkward. So remember, I have torn that paper ever so slightly right there. Okay, but I'm going to go ahead and trim this with you know, just slightly less than 1/4 of an inch. So let's go ahead and do this. I just ordered new 28mm blades for myself. I find that 28mm cutter is handy. It is definitely not required. Okay, we're going to once again go ahead and put our white piece of fabric right here, and we're going to line that up because white is A5. We're going to go ahead and pull this in here, and we can stick a pin in it or just take it straight to the sewing machine. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and lay this over here. I really do like piecing things with little strips of fabric for my little blocks. I waste more fabric that way, but sometimes I, you know, second guess myself, well, did I lay that out right to cover up everything? Let's go ahead and press that. And we've got our last piece of fabric to add to our small Flying Geese foundation paper piece. Remember, right sides together on the back of the paper, but before that, we're going to trim off this excess. So let's come over here and look at how far I sewed in to that other edge, which is just fine. So I over sewed on that. Tear your paper back. I want you guys to see that you can tear that paper back. It doesn't have to stay perfect right there. If you feel like it tore too much, you can use Scotch Magic Tape to tape it back together, and it won't impair it while you're pressing everything and sewing everything. So I'm going to go ahead and trim this. This is between A4, A5, and A6. I'm moving back that, folding that back on the seam allowance. I flipped it back. I'm now going to trim about my 1/4 inch seam. I've laid that right there. Now I'm going to match up my other piece of fabric right here. I'm going to flip it back and I'm going to stitch on the line. And that's our last little stitch on here. But what is the funnest part for me is actually trimming down the block to size. So I'm going to show you that real fast. And so don't leave, but let's talk about freedom. Freedom is really important in your life. And sometimes we can feel chained up or like things in life aren't great. We might lose our freedom if we make a really bad choice and we would have to go to jail, right? So we want to do whatever we can to feel less anxiety, to feel less stress, by being prepared and things like that. So there's lots of different things that we can do to create more of a feeling of freedom in our life. And part of that is not having to worry as much and putting faith in the things that are bigger. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to trim this up for you, but I want to show you on this pattern. The solid line around the block is the line that you trim up that block. All of the other lines in this block are stitching lines, so you can see that on the actual paper. So we're going to go ahead and trim off that solid line of the block. It took me such a long time to actually make this pattern. It was very important to me, and when I trim here, I'm actually giving myself, I'm not trimming right exactly on that black line. Sometimes I just trim just to the edge of that black line, so I can still see that line if you can see that there. Okay, let's go ahead and go to the next one. My favorite part is when you flip this over. Whoops. Let's go ahead and get this in there. Is when you flip it over and you get to see how cute this quilt block is. This quilt block is actually, 2.5 inches square. So I just find sewing tiny is just beyond fun to do. It actually is quite the trend in quilting right now, sewing tiny. There are so many things you can do when you know how to sew tiny. So for example, you could make a quilt block and put it on a little zipper pouch that you have. So there are so many options when you learn this skill set of places that you can add and incorporate quilt blocks into everyday things. So this is a great skill to learn. But look at how adorable that is, and also look at how exact those quilt blocks are side by side. So I think if we even got all of our quilt blocks all together, which would be really a lot of fun to see because we're sewing around the world, but to see those all together, it would be just amazing how exact and precise those quilt blocks actually would be. So anyways, here's our original version. And remember, I've got a version of this of black and white and negative space. My entire quilt is just black and white. Can't wait to show you this one, but I'm swapping out some blocks because we used cloud instead of white fabric. So I'm so anxious to show you that. The bed runner is on the long arm. I keep wanting to finish it, but I'm polishing some things up with the course. Let's go ahead and switch the camera. So go ahead, if you haven't already, if you've already purchased your Live Well, Live Strong quilt pattern, there is an updated version. The updated version has lots of great things in here with the different layouts. You can make this king, queen, twin, and as a bed runner. And then you can also download your foundation paper piecing version of the pattern. So be sure to go back to your Stitches Quilting account and get those things downloaded, or purchase your pattern and be sure to get everything taken care of. So anyways, I'm so excited, you guys. I think that this has been a great thing to focus on. Remember, this quilt is about health and wellness for women with 26 quilt blocks that are traditional but put together in a modern way that focus on aspects of health and wellness. And this week's quilt block is about freedom and how we can have more freedom in our life and appreciate the freedom that we do have. So, please just feel that abundance in your life and feel the abundance that you have, freedom to make choices and to make the right choices, and to study out those choices that you have, or freedom to forgive somebody or forgive yourself and to release burdens on you so you are lighter and happier and brighter. Anyways, that's what the video is for today. I just love you guys so much. Remember, there is a course for this. If you feel overwhelmed by all of the sewing, you can take a course for the Live Well, Live Strong quilt. It's a workshop and course that we do Zoom classes, but get your pattern and all that other stuff. It's so wonderful to see you guys. Liz, I am not doing the foundation paper piece black and white right now. This is the standard size that goes into a negative space quilt, and it is so beautiful. It's just, I've picked out, it's just like this one right here with the corals, but I've picked out the ones, the quilt block, they have holes in it. It was a whole quilt top, but I picked out the ones that didn't have pure white in there. It had cloud, and I know you can't see much of a difference, but in the sunshine you can. It's a holy mess. I should take a picture so you can see this quilt as a holy mess, because it's actually kind of comical. Anyways, all right, I love you guys so much. I hope you guys have a great day, and I'll try to get a picture of my holy mess of my black and white negative space quilt. So anyways, I'll see you guys on Friday, and we will get together and do another live video. Love you guys. Be sure to subscribe and to like the video, comment, so that I can engage with you, and that's just absolutely